Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
A lot of fun. We just met you a couple days ago.
Yep.
I see pictures of your adorable child on Facebook all the time because Dark's friends with his grandma. So it's fun to actually meet the mother side of things.
Yeah.
And hear about your story and what your life has been like.
Yeah.
And we heard you wanted to start a podcast.
Yeah.
And then the ball just...
Because I was like, I'm going to start my podcast this month. It's been years coming.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm going to finally do it. And then you guys walked in, and it was pretty hilarious. Like, if the universe isn't listening, I don't believe you.
Right. If this isn't a sign, what else?
Seriously. Yeah.
So I'll jump ahead a little bit. What did you want to make your podcast about?
So my podcast is called Gaialog.
Gaia as in G-A-I-A-I?
Yep.
As in dialogue.
G-A-I-A.
Yeah, G-A-I-A. A log. Yeah.
Right.
Nice.
A dialogue, but
So it's
dialogue.
like...
That's totally hashtagable.
Extremely hashtagable.
And it's like, there's mythos and then there's logos. And so there's like a feminine imagination to the world. Then there's the logos, like the word, the logic.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of fuse those together and explore this reality that we're all experiencing. Because it's a weird one.
I have come to the perspective over the past few years that we're all experiencing a different reality at any given moment.
From each other.
And we just happen to have these crossovers where we're like, oh, I am also a mother, you are also a mother, like, oh, I drive a car, you drive a car. And so we sort of think we're in the same universe. But it's like, especially over the last couple of years, there's been so much division between people across so many spectrums. It seems like you really can't count that this person is in the same universe that you're in, or that they're thinking they observe things the same way that you do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we're all in our own worlds for
Yeah.
sure. Some of us are in the same ones for a little while, but then even then, something gets triggered and it expands your awareness and your perspective, and then
maybe
you have
not
to
them.
go explore the new perspective from there. So we might meet up for a little while, but I don't think we're meant to stay in the same place or with the same people like forever.
That's definitely like a super modern Orthodox view of relationships that like super modern, I mean in the last couple hundred years, the Orthodox has been, oh, you mate for life and that's it, and you have your hometown and that's your hometown forever.
That's so
funny.
That's so funny.
That's the norm for so many people, and there's so much grief
default
for folks when something squishes them up against this boundary of like, maybe I'm not supposed to be friends with those people from high school forever.
Yeah, and I think
What's
that
wrong
that's
with me?
pretty interesting because that's just a sign of the times of what we're experiencing now. With so many people experiencing trauma worldwide because of the divide that money creates and how many of us there are now. Like, growing up, I was on food stamps. Like, my family, we didn't really have much. If we didn't live with my grandpa, we probably wouldn't have had one house for too long.
Right.
But I lived in at least 20 houses by the time I was 18. So we were always moving around. And I feel like, my mom had a couple boyfriends at a time, so did my dad. My dad would meet a new girlfriend on the plane and then bring her and then we would all cruise,
Wow, yeah.
So it's just, there wasn't much stability in my life. So everything was always fluid, in and out. And I can see how other people, it's not just me who've experienced that. So many people, that's their reality too. There's not a sense of stability because their parents were kids and are still kids while they're raising kids.
Right.
So
that they got locked into that moment where the kid occurred. Yeah. And then they didn't really have the energy to develop past that point.
No, my mom was 15 when I was born.
Right.
Yeah.
So is your mom going back and doing, getting to know herself or doing any kind of, now that the kids are grown, I'm guessing most of the kids are grown, or do you still have siblings at home?
I'm one of 7.
Okay.
And I have an older brother who I've only met a couple times.
Holy cow.
He lives, but not from my mom, from my dad.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I have, I think, 4 younger sisters.
Yeah.
And then my brother. So I don't really know. I only know my brother and my 15-year-old sister. So even there, more instability. Uh-oh, we got a yard worker here.
Oh, yeah. good.
Hi.
He's background. We're
Um,
not paying him.
We'll have that
to be an
conversation.
extra.
We have
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
We'll have a conversation with Pia later, like you scheduled and
You.
yard
we can
person.
hashtag him in here too for his long service. So
Yeah, that's right. We'll go ask him what his long service is. Hey, if you're looking for a good guy, maybe this guy we don't know. Whew. Oh, Isabella Cash is tuning in from New Zealand.
Nice.
That's so cool. That's so exciting. And then Lo Rochelle tuned in earlier from the Bay Area. Lo
Nice.
Rochelle is listening from the Bay Area. That's so exciting. Very exciting.
Weird.
Have
Yeah.
you been to New Zealand?
Yes, I have. And I actually, my dad just got a message on 23andMe from one of our like cousins, and he has like all this information about which of the 5 ships we arrived
Oh wow.
from Aotearoa in. Like, it was pretty crazy.
Wow.
So
Wait.
we have a
Like
strong-
Polynesian
I'm
style
gonna-
way back in the day catamaran ship from Aotearoa?
Oh yeah.
What?
Like we
That's
were
amazing.
on one of the 5. Yeah, so I would butcher it, but my dad got this long message from like one of our
Just
our
reaching
main
out and letting you
cousins.
know.
Yeah, so then my dad was like, "What's your number?" You know, and then he called the guy like right then. We had this whole conversation with him.
So like the 23andMe, he's finding family members through that.
Hey, just so you know, I know things about our family.
Yeah.
You know, like spreading
Yeah,
this,
so
this
somebody matched with
generational.
my dad, and
Mhm.
they recognized him because my dad's like in Hawaii Five-0 and in like a couple movies, and he's
Yeah.
a well-known professional big wave surfer.
Okay.
gotcha.
So I think the guy just recognized him, and then he was like, "Whoa, I have some information for you
Yeah.
that I know you're gonna like."
I love that. I feel as though I don't have a heritage. I grew up at a super white upbringing, but I knew that my father was part Alaskan Native. He had been adopted, so we only met his birth father a couple of times while I was a child, and like, you know, yeah, Papa Nick, we know Papa Nick, you know, but we didn't have any kind of Native experience or connection growing up. And then, so my heritage growing up was super conservative evangelical Christianity, and that was my heritage.
What else do you need to know?
What?
Yeah, that's, beyond that, there's nothing really important.
Well, no, they didn't say that thing. But like my heritage was the church and the church elders and the church history and like Martin Luther, and we obviously weren't taught about all the genocide and the manipulation and the mistreatment of women in the church history, just like
And
yeah. Just all the really great stuff. All the like liberating people from the state and stuff like that. And so when I stopped going to church, like 7 years ago, I began to realize that I really had like lost my heritage. You know, I didn't have this sense of
No tribal identity.
no tribal identity, no. Well, and specifically tribal identity, because I can choose tribal identities in the present. You know, I could say I'm definitely part of the LGBTQ. I'm definitely, you know, I could just say, you know, I could pick current tribal identities, but this idea of having a past, of like people to think back on, and
Yeah.
where did I come from, and how did I get here, and what sorts of things are affecting me for good and ill these days, you know? And I think that's so exciting that you guys are able to trace backwards to how you even arrived on this island and the people
Yeah.
that you arrived with.
Yeah, and there's so much information out there. It's kind of hard to like figure out where to even start looking for that kind of stuff. So I was really grateful that that guy reached out
It's a big
and
starting
that
point.
he had it, you know,
Right.
because it's like I wouldn't even know where to begin with that.
So do you get obsessive and like want to make a family tree?
No.
Really? Because like for me, it's like the minute I'm like, oh my god, we need to like sort all these names and figure out who the like what the giant, yeah, just this desire to have this sense of family.
I don't. I think that it's cool, but I don't really approach things in that way, I guess. Life has brought me so many crazy, bizarre things already
Yeah.
that I'm kind of just like, I don't need to look for it. I don't need to do it. It just reveals itself to me. Like, here are a couple examples of weird things that have happened in my benefit that I couldn't have planned. So my mom's, I'm not really going to talk much about my childhood because I respect my mom and my dad's privacy, and I love
their current experience.
Yeah, but I will say that my mom is somewhat homeless because she would say houseless.
Yeah.
Right.
She doesn't feel like she doesn't have a
people.
home. She just doesn't have a house, and she doesn't want to live the way that we all live. But so when she first became houseless, she had a van that she lived in, and she had all of her stuff from our home in a box. And one day, someone found her van, and it wasn't working anymore, and it was just abandoned, and it had been that way for a while. So someone was taking it to throw the van away, and this man happened to be there, and he looked in the box, and recognized my eyes in all of the baby pictures.
Yeah.
What?
So then he somehow got a hold of my grandpa and brought all of my baby pictures, everything that I had made for my mom for Mother's Day, her favorite shoes, her favorite bags, her
memorabilia,
everything was in this one box.
Wow.
And this guy recognized me
And
from my
saved
baby
it.
photos and brought them to my house.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
And then another time I was in Radio Shack, back when that was the thing. And this guy walked up to me and he recognized my eyes because when I was a kid, I was all eyes and all nostrils. I was just like, you know? So he recognized me and he said he was at this beach one day, and I was babysat by a lot of different people when I was a kid because my parents were doing whatever they were doing. And then it's kind of a thing on an island that like everyone raises everyone's kids because the kids kind of raise each other too. So it's easier to have that tribal mentality, but sometimes kids get away from you. So I slipped into the water and I started to drown, and this guy had jumped in and saved me. And then I was 17 and he recognized me in Radio Shack, and I was just like crying in Radio Shack, like thanking this random stranger for my life. So it's like things like that happen to me all the time.
Yeah.
And so I don't really ever feel like I have to go
always
looking
had this
for something.
sense of like the universe was very connected to you.
Yeah, and it's almost like this woman that I really love her energy and healing work, she talks about intention, and she says that your intention is actually the sum total of all of your energy at once. And so your intention that you put out into the universe is the collective of everything you're feeling. And lately I've been contemplating that a lot, because if that's the case, then the only way to change our intention is to change our perspective and to learn something new. Right?
Because all your anxieties are in that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Your doubts.
So knowledge truly is power in that sense, because the more that you learn, the more that you change your mind, the more that you change your intention and let go of things that could have held you down otherwise.
Yeah.
And start becoming more. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that very much.
I think the 23andMe thing has been interesting because we had a friend in town in Butte who thought that he was a particular genealogy, and then suddenly found out that his parents were not his parents.
I had a friend who found out that her dad was not her dad.
And he was not from that country. Like his whole identity was like pride in this thing, right? And then at 70 something years old, he's suddenly having to redefine his whole, like, if I'm not that, then what am I? And it's just sort of lurching around of like, what group can I claim? Because I so valued being that guy, but I'm obviously not that guy. So who am I? And I think it's been really jarring and interesting for a lot of people when, like, you get called by a son you didn't know you had, or you find out you had brothers you didn't know you had.
Well, and for this friend in particular, all of the people that would have been able to tell him who his real dad was, were already dead.
Done at that point, right?
So he will just never know.
Whoa.
In this life,
So I think that's an interesting. I find it's a big part of what we do in our show is the idea of like his orthodox perspective of himself got shattered by a new reality, and then what's left, and what is that experience like? I think for a lot of people, they've had an experience of an identity, and then that identity gets challenged, and you either double down on that identity and say, screw you, new information, I'm just going to continue to be Scottish, even though I know I'm not. Or you have to sort of reevaluate everything. Have you ever had And I think it's also interesting with your work and the kind of stuff that you're looking into and diving into. There's the idea of the genetic line, this linear genetic line, and then this idea of maybe there's something, maybe the genetic beings are, I'm just going to throw this out there and we can riff from there. Maybe the genetic being is like a pickup truck or a Prius or a Ferrari, but the driver might be anything.
Yeah.
And so like you have this genetic, the creature genetic line.
The physical
And then the
carbon-based
star
genetic line.
But there may be some
Other
star lineage or
spiritual,
however you call it. I don't
yeah.
even know what the terminology
variety of
is.
terms.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. A cosmic lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have some, when did you come into that being a thing that you were interested in?
Well, it's hard to say. I feel like it really started solidifying for me after I sat with ayahuasca. But what was funny was that after I sat with ayahuasca and my mind opened to that, then I was inspired to dive deeper into my Hawaiian history.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then in the Kumulipo, the chant of creation, it says that we came directly here from the Pleiades. That-
Which culture does a Kumalipo chant?
Hawaiian.
Hawaiian.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The Kumulipo is a Hawaiian creation chant of how we came to be.
Cool.
And so they, and many different tribes from all around the world, say that we came directly from the stars.
To Hawaii.
Some people believe they came from Sirius. Some people believe they came from Andromeda. some-
Dogon tribe is serious.
I kind of had this intuitive thing where it was like, on your way to Earth, you kind of like stop at different star systems and like absorb knowledge from those things. Then you come through the Pleiades, or then.
And then if
but-
you can like align with whichever, system you came from, that can be a big deal.
Yeah.
Like if you find out.
Yeah. So the first time that I did ayahuasca,
Yeah, tell us about that.
yeah.
And would you mind just letting people know what ayahuasca is? For
Right.
people
Well,
who are
and
not aware of what it
even
is?
before that,
Okay.
we never did do the 3-second bio of Mahina Alexander. And old Deb in Idaho asked if we could reintroduce.
She always wants to know who we're talking to,
Okay.
and that's why I was mentioning earlier. Sometimes it's not easy to give. So maybe the bio of the week, because
Yeah.
you do a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
how do you identify yourself in the moment?
And it's tough because you don't know, like we have a broad spectrum of people listening from all over the place. So you're not like, if I were defining myself to someone who I was trying to get a job from, that would be a different bio.
I work
feel
well
like,
with people.
I feel like I am a consciousness explorer, somebody who knows that I don't know too much but wants to know more,
Awesome.
and I'm open to discussing what I've experienced and sharing that in a way that makes others feel safe to share their experiences as well. To gather more information to feel safe enough to start enjoying my life.
Yeah.
So now I have a 15-month-old son, and I just want to be able to feel present and grounded and clear and empowered, and like I can take on anything that comes my way.
Yeah.
And so I'm just following my heart step by step to see whatever life presents to me, because I know it's all a lesson.
Because you want to become present with your kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other version of me is like, the short version is that I grew up in Hawaii, and eventually my dad convinced me that it would be a good idea for me to be a model, because he
Okay.
thought that that would make me lots of money.
The eyeballs being.
I moved to LA and I started attempting that, and I was so depressed that I started smoking and drinking a lot.
Not
So
good for the
depressed.
modeling.
No, and I actually never went to any castings because the driver for the agency, she and I became like best friends. She was like 50 something. She'd pick me up, we'd drink and smoke together. We'd eat corn dogs on the dock, and we would just talk shit about everyone. It was so low vibes, but it was so funny. It's some of my most treasured memories because it was just fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, the modeling life was not for me. Everyone just looked so mad all the time. Just like, yeah, I just couldn't do it. But that's when I started exploring like crystals. I started seeing 333 everywhere, like fucking
Synchronicities.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was still talking to my mom at that point, and I asked her, like, what does this mean? I'm literally seeing
Where's this number come from?
everywhere. And she's like, oh, you were born at 3:33 a.m.
What?
And I was
That's
like,
nice.
what the fuck? So that started opening up. I started having an interest in crystals, in the unseen worlds. I've always had really crazy dreams. I can remember like the first dream I've ever had. It was in kindergarten, and it involved this boy that I had a crush on, which was why it made me remember it, right? So it was like funny, but I've always had this really like intimate connection with my subconscious through dreams, and I feel like that's been my therapy throughout everything. But when I was 15, that's when I started kind of having like out of body astral experiences. I was laying in my bed one night and snowflakes started falling from the ceiling, and I was just like, is this really happening?
And
I
having
was
grown up in
literally-
Hawaii, like, had you ever seen snow
No,
for real?
I've still never seen snow. So I was just opening my eyes like this. I was like, is this really happening? And it was. And the hole just got bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden, it was like, I was so baffled that I wasn't labeling it. I was just in awe.
Yeah.
So now I've had experiences recently, side note, where I'll see something out of the corner of my eye and I'll be like, oh, that might be. And then it goes away. Whereas when I was 15, I didn't have as much book knowledge on it as I do now. So I wasn't labeling or defining it as anything. I was just simply observing. And then I became, simultaneously, I was like moving through parallel lives, right? I'm laying in my bed, and then I'm a Russian man after a long day with 5 other Russian men, and I'm understanding Russian like it's English. And we're all wearing these really fluffy hats, and we're just going like this, and we're like,
How old were you when that happened?
15.
So, wow. So do you worry, okay, just sidebar, do you worry that like your consciousness isn't stuck to your body very well and that you might just someday? Like if you're astral projecting all the time and looping between
I don't astral project.
You know, like Peter Pan trying to pin his shadow on.
But yeah, I feel that. I never really worry
It's like
about
what came
it
up
though,
for me.
because you know what? That's associated with trauma, with dissociation.
Astral
So-
projection is?
Not astral projection, but the part that I worry about that you're describing is my spirit not feeling like it's safe to come into my body because of the worry, the fear, the density, and the dissociation that my personality's experiencing.
Right.
Doesn't create a sturdy foundation for my spirit to come
But
into.
that's exactly the work you're doing right now.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Is so that I can be more embodied and feel more grounded. Because I haven't.
So you had like this default world line where you grow up in Hawaii, go do the modeling thing, come back.
I went and did the modeling thing. I kind of just like, just was drinking a lot, smoking a lot of weed, a lot of cigarettes. Then I started doing mushrooms, and once I started doing mushrooms,
That was
acid,
your very first
it was just
substance.
like the whole world opened up.
That was like
And-
your first substance beyond smoke, nicotine and alcohol?
Yeah.
Was mushrooms?
Yeah.
Not even marijuana?
No, marijuana,
weed.
yeah.
No,
Okay.
I smoked weed. I think I started smoking weed at like 14. or
Okay,
something.
gotcha.
So, was your first psychedelic experience like a
I
breakthrough moment?
honestly can't even remember my first psychedelic experience because once I started, I was pretty much just doing it all the time.
You went
type
in.
of thing. It
What-
wasn't like it was like a weekend thing.
Right.
It was like on the
But
weekends
the first-
we would
yeah.
go camping where there's no service, no one. We're at the highest peak of the mountain, the most beautiful fucking place in the world.
Yeah.
And we're all tripping balls like little 5-year-olds, laughing hysterically, playing deep house, having an entire field to ourselves, and just losing our brains because the mango tree looks like King Kong.
Yes, just laughing.
We're
until
just
you pee.
laughing so hard, like laughing, crying. I love you. You're the best. You know.
I love
It's
that.
just a total renewal of just shattering the illusion of separateness. Because when you do psychedelics, you come into this playful state, and then we can access each other again.
Right.
Whereas like before, there's this weird separateness to us where we're like, I don't know, he might be an asshole or she might fucking hate me. I
Right.
just don't know. there's all these illusions that we're programmed to worry about because of like TV and stuff. But when you go into nature and you have these experiences with psychedelics with your friends, you all realize that you're just a bunch of shitheads, like just doing fuck all together.
It's not. That's definitely been my experience with psychedelics too. Is it's not like I ascend to a place where I find like-minded ascended people. It's more like I like chill out.
Yeah, enough to
the level
enjoy
where
the
I'm
people
like,
that
oh
are
my
already
God,
here. Yeah.
we're all schmucks. So why are we not having a good time together?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so that led into you have that default world progression, then also the like non-default world, which is like the snowflakes falling in 333 and astral projection to Russia, and it all converged with psychedelics.
Yeah, and then so I moved home for a little while, and I started using Instagram to make money. So then I would work like one-on-one with companies, and they would pay me, and I would shoot like 10 photos for them.
Yeah.
They would pay me however much, and then that's how I made money. And then I would do whatever the fuck I want and wear their stuff while I was doing it.
Nice.
And then that's how I
sounds fun.
supplied my life.
Yeah.
And you know, people are like, how do you have this life? And I'm like, I live with my grandparents.
Right. Yeah.
I live with my grandparents. I make enough money to do what I want, and it's quite simple, really.
Right.
That's good for people to hear that.
And I
Right.
didn't have to go on, like, it was a privilege. I was born in a beautiful place, and I lived with my grandparents who, you know, it's like, I think a lot of us live with our parents for a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Nowadays, because everything's so expensive.
It's harder.
So people from the outside are like, God, how is she doing this? And blah, blah, blah. It's
Well,
like,
we used to
much
have
more
that
relaxed.
kind of community, you know, when we were, when humanity was more tribal, when a higher percentage of humanity was tribal, you would have multiple people raising kids.
Yeah.
And you would have multiple places you could live, you know? This concept of homelessness, I feel as though the concept of involuntary houselessness would be an affront to our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you leave your neighbors on the street.
Yeah.
You leave your people on the street. Like, you have, like, Butte is only 30% occupancy in the historic district. There are a ton of old buildings that have nobody living in them. And we have homeless people.
It's so silly.
It's egregious. And I feel as though that the concept that it's just okay that some people live and die on the streets would just not even compute for the times past versions of human society where we lived and worked together and took care of our crazy people and took care of our single mothers and took care of the widows.
Crazy people also weren't crazy people.
They also weren't the crazy people.
Like, if we were back then, or even just over there right now, right? There's a great TED Talk on this. It's called Psychosis or Spiritual Awakening. And the guy basically goes into the fact that people who are labeled schizophrenic, I can't say every single person, but a good amount of them, if they were in a tribe and they were showing these same qualities, these same symptoms, for lack of a better word, these characteristics, they would be sent to a priest. And the priest would then take them in and train them as a shaman, as a priest. Because they're born enlightened with a higher vision than others may have right off the bat.
Yes.
And this could be because of past life trainings and their ability to access knowledge now. And then karmically, they have to break through the challenge of the family that they're born into. And then out into the luminosity of being who they are in this now. But then it also challenges us as a society. What are we going to do to them? And then we have to go through the timeline of, you know, a lot of people punishing these kinds of people for exhibiting qualities that we just simply don't understand.
They're disturbing the class. We need to put them
Yeah.
on some drugs because they're upsetting the curve, they're messing
And
with
then
the...
meanwhile, the FBI and the government just takes people like them, starts testing them in the
Oh,
background,
yes.
and then weaponizing them as soldiers using LSD. It's
right.
like, oh, this exists, but we got to keep it
We're
for
going to use
ourselves.
it for a bad way.
Greed
Right.
is not just about money, it's about power in
Mhm.
general. And people with these abilities, they started, doing these experiments in China long ago, because a lot of kids in China and everywhere, but these specific experiments in China, they had 3 to 5 year olds, and what they would do are things like on the table they would put marbles, and then they would put an upside down cup, and the child would look at it and marble would be inside the cup. Or they would open a book to a random page, and they would rip out the page and bring the child into the room, crumple it up, put it under their armpit, recite it word for word, front to back.
Knowing what was on the image.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they could see with any part of their body, not just their eyes.
Kids who hadn't been told that we're only able to perceive certain ways yet, and so they hadn't shut down those
Yeah,
abilities.
maybe they had, I don't know, a certain type of home environment that made them feel safe enough to explore their natural blueprint, and they
Right.
weren't imprinted in that short amount of time to make them suppress.
No, those are sensitive sensibilities that get shut down by people who don't understand them, and especially I think in more organized religious cultures, that can fly in the face of the narrative. And I know for myself growing up, like anything that was outside the norm was definitely, you were giving some kind of reinforcement to make sure you don't explore it again. I have synesthesia, so I have but nobody had a name for it. Nobody knew what it
is
was.
that? I'm sorry.
Synesthesia is like...
Oh, can I describe this one?
Yeah, you describe this one.
So I read this book in high school called A Mango-Shaped Space. And she wasn't talking about the shape of a mango fruit. She was talking about the color, mango color. And the mango was the name of her cat. And she could see pheromones. And she didn't realize for a long time in her life that she was experiencing something everybody else wasn't experiencing.
Right.
Because as a kid, she knew where her cat Mango had been, because there would be a mango-shaped space on the couch with an aura. She was basically seeing the auras of the cat. And so it was very interesting. The book, it was a fictional account of her knowing that she has this thing, dealing with this thing, and then hitting puberty and falling for a boy and dealing with that pheromone thing, all from, so synesthesia at its basis is you mix up, you do two senses at once.
You're processing the world through multiple modalities instead of one.
So the letter, when I think of my sister Coco, I've always thought of purple. And that's just very mild. And a lot of people do that without even knowing that it's a thing.
Yeah.
Or kids who hate certain numbers because they smell bad.
Yeah.
The numbers smell bad. Yeah.
They say there's a bunch of different kinds. That's why people don't really quantify it, because it's hard to quantify, because it's sort of different with every person. One person might see, when they read the page, all the E's are blue, all the C's are red, all the D's are yellow always.
Well,
and the other people have, when they hear sounds, they see shapes.
Yeah.
Or there's another book called The Man Who Mistook His Hat for His Wife, or his wife for his hat. There's these things that happen where, and for myself, there's what they call a metaphorical synesthesia, where you have the consensus story that is a house and this person has a job, and then there's a metaphorical where that person then becomes an archetype that is performing some cosmic function when they come to deliver you the pizza. It's interesting to look into, because people experience it on psychedelics who don't have it as a native experience.
Yeah, you're actually reminding me that the first time that I did DMT was not in fact grandmother ayahuasca, it was actually changa.
What's changa?
Chaga.
It's a type of DMT that's mixed with other herbs. I did it with my 2 girlfriends and a shaman, and I basically blast off into outer space, and I saw Krishna in a golden sari dripping in golden diamonds dancing across the universe for infinities. Then all of a sudden I remembered that I had a body, and I was like, well, where is Mahina?
Where is?
And then,
Oh no!
And then my body opened her eyes, and I saw from the perspective of my spirit falling all the way back down through the dimensions, and then I sat up in my body.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, and I was inside a toroidal field of sacred geometry.
What's
like
toroidal?
a toroidal field basically is like the inside of a donut.
It's a
so
donut
like,
in a
there's
donut.
an axis. There's an axis, and it's a positive and negative charge of energy that's going like this.
Right, okay.
And so
I've seen that
when
image
you're
before.
on DMT, sometimes what happens is that everything gets rounded, and then you start to see the fabric of existence that connects everything, because we're not just like floating around.
A
It's like
single
there's
all by
fabric,
myself, not touching
Right.
and the
anything.
fabric is sacred geometry.
My friend
And
Jason
so-
used to call it code. You can see the code
Exactly.
of the universe.
So
Yeah.
I saw that, and basically, I saw at least, I think, like 13 beings in the room, and the room was rainbow. It was like this, like
Yeah.
rainbow, and there were, for every color, there was an archetypal embodiment of that color who also had a sound. And so
Ooh,
they were
yeah.
all around us, so beautiful, wearing these like crowns and these really long, elaborate silks, and they didn't have feet. Their feet looked like smoke. They were just like, ooh.
Wish
And that's
it was
my
all
synesthesia.
around us. They were all around us, and they were just hugging and kissing us, and I was just crying. So I was like, whoa, they're always like watching out for us. It was like experiencing angels. And I just remembered that as they moved, they harmonized and created a song. And it was like a symphony. Have you ever heard when they slow crickets down by like 300
Yes,
It
yes.
sounded exactly like that.
What's the dog's name?
Godzilla.
Oh, the dog's name is Godzilla. Oh,
Yeah,
funny. All
that's
right.
what it
Very
is.
good.
So, in your early experiences of that, like, what do you think the first time I did DMT, I think the best way I can
and that
break
was,
down.
sorry,
yeah,
that was
yeah.
my thing of synesthesia.
That was trauma.
Synesthesia.
Right, that has to do with synesthesia.
Because I think that we're all in this organism,
Yeah.
and like everything is so connected that we evolve and we move, and we're all this organism that is everythingness. But because we have a neocortex, we identify with only this one thing. Whereas it's just this,
right.
and then our human bodies have the capability of having an ego so that our body can take care of itself.
You
Right.
talked about that way of thinking of this metaphor is like we're all hairs on the back of the same dog, but we think,
Yeah,
but we
or
think
we're
that
all,
we're only
you know,
one
you
hair.
have a glove,
Yeah.
right? You have a glove. This is how one elder described it to me. And you blow up the glove, and all these fingers think they're human,
Right.
but it's a fucking hand attached to a body that contains
Right.
snails, zygotes,
Yeah.
this,
Or like
all of it.
polyps
So
on
then
a sea anemone or something.
synesthesia, if you looked at it from that point, what if the people are just pulling talents and abilities from other organisms within the space of isness? Do you know what I mean?
What is isness?
Isness?
No, but
No, wait. She's
no.
going to answer because nobody ever answers that. What is?
She was so ready though.
Yeah, I'm ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah, the isness is the everythingness. So it's like everything that you can conceive of as being a reality, everything that you see, a documentary of what's going on in the deep sea. It's like all of that is happening right now. And it's called the isness. And we as humans get so caught up in our own individual experiences that we're on this like timeline of like linear thinking.
Right.
And like
My
patriarch-
life.
like masculine energy is straight lines. Feminine energy is curved, and with both you get creation. But like
Right.
one without the other is just like a puddle with no ground. It's a floating, it's like
Right.
Line.
I like that. A puddle with no ground. As the
It's
idea that we're disconnected is ridiculous.
it's just so funny. It's like you know, the universe is ones and zeros. It's constantly fucking itself. It's just like, how can you?
That's like the R-rated version of the universe is God playing hide and seek with himself.
Yes, exactly, because that's what's happening. It's
Right.
like I constantly have, and I think it's funny that it's called amniotic fluid, because we're born, we
Yeah.
have this amnesia, we pass through
Ah.
this river
Oh
of forgetfulness.
my God!
This river of forgetfulness, right? We're just
Right.
like in there and we're like, I forget everything.
It's like the reverse River
But meanwhile,
Styx.
we're also being programmed. Like in Richard's Rudd gene keys, he talks about how in the 3 trimesters that you're in your mother's womb, the first is physical. The physical 7 years of your development is the first trimester. The second 7 years is the second trimester of emotions, and then the third is until 21 mental.
Okay.
So those are like the key times of development. Not to say that it's like so.
That'd be so beautiful.
Generally
It's
speaking,
the programming though.
It'd be so beautiful if
that's why
parents were empowered with that, so that they were able to like be kind to their children while they're pre-teening and teening it up. Because they're literally just full-on emotional fuckery at that point for like 8 years.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so fascinating that at 21, at this 777, this third boom, 21, go drink.
Right.
Go drink.
Yeah.
Go get fucked up. Go destroy your body.
The number of completion.
So funny. It's like we graduate past this programming of our mother's womb and become ourselves cellularly. On a cellular level, our cells are fucking renewed and we're brand new and we get to start writing the script of our lives. And that's when they get you hooked on addiction. It's so fascinating.
Horrific.
There was when I was in Los Angeles, I was going through a custody battle for my daughter, and because I'm a card-carrying Choctaw, I have enough Choctaw blood to have a card. I was able to get a Native American counselor instead of somebody from the Borg. And
by the Borg, you mean?
Just like the machine reality of the court systems, you know.
Yeah.
And this guy we were able to just go to the park and drop in, right? We were actually having a real conversation, and I was like 23 or something like that, right? So he goes like, he was Navajo, and he goes like the Navajo culture, and he's cobbling together like Navajo and then Jewish culture and a few other cultures. But he's like, in Navajo, like you just gotta survive till you get through your teens. Like just stay alive. That's really your job, is just to live and stay alive. And then your 20s is where you fuck up and fuck around and fuck off.
Yeah.
That's how you figure out where the limits are, and you make tons of mistakes. That's what you're supposed to do. And so instead of me like, I haven't done anything right yet, he's like, you're doing everything as you should because you're learning who you are in the whole scheme of things. And then 30s is where you take those lessons and then you manifest your life from those lessons.
Yeah.
And then if you turn 40, and this goes into the Jewish zeitgeist, if you turn 40 and you've done that work and you haven't lost your mind, you haven't got caught up in the system where you're still thinking, then you're an adult. Mm-hmm. But you don't turn an adult until you're 40.
Yeah.
Which we're all like supposed to be responsible adults at 23 and get our own apartment and have our job and do all that. I mean, in our culture,
birth children.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's bizarre.
So I think expanding that idea of development rather than the sort of prescribed idea of development that we get for me was really liberating, because suddenly I was like, it just took all the pressure off of having to have done everything right, and that my mistakes were learning mistakes.
We all feel that, you know. It's just like, especially when you can hear the voice of like your desires too, and you're like, I know what I'm capable of and I know what I want to do, but I can't describe it and I don't know fully what it is yet, but I know I'm meant for something. I just don't know what. And
do you feel like you found it? Sorry, go ahead.
And it's because we don't have the experience fully to understand what that is yet. It's exactly what you just described. And that's how I've felt my whole life, is like, I know I'm meant to do something, I just don't fucking know exactly what it is, and I'm just doing the next thing I feel like I should be doing.
Following the clues.
And I can intuitively feel that I'm getting closer and closer to it, but I still don't totally know what it is, and I think that when I do find out, I'm just going to laugh and be like, oh, it's just what I've been doing. But my perspective of what I'm doing changes, and I respect you, I love you, it's like more of a closeness that we all feel. I think that's what we're moving towards, is this like understanding and this humor and this paradox of like, what are we all doing type of thing.
Right.
And what are we trying so hard for? Like,
yeah, I want to go back to your DMT experience.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask you about that experience, because I've done DMT, and when I interviewed people who had done it before.
How's that sound working out for you guys?
Yeah,
are you able to hear us over that guy?
It's a part of the cosmic concert.
let us know.
We went through several different ideas of how to set this up for you all today, but we happen to live in paradise, and paradise gets overgrown. So.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
a lot of people that I talked to who were doing DMT, the common thing that people walked away with was that they had this aha moment where they're like, why did I ever stress about anything ever?
Literally.
But that was your experience?
Now you get to peek over my shoulder while I'm doing things. All right, so Lo's wondering, beautiful convo, are there questions prepared for Mahina? We usually just wing it with interesting people. I usually, as I get to know somebody in advance of a show, I'll pick a hook or something that I think would be an interesting pathway into conversation, but I don't usually be like, and then where did you grow up? And then where did you go to high school? And then what was your favorite job?
And
then,
my work, like where I'm at in my life right now,
I'm
is
so beyond
non-linear
Yes.
that literally any topic can go all the way over
Yes.
here and then circle back.
This is what we do on the show all the time.
Like the zoom out, zoom in.
Yeah.
So like we'll start here and then
And we
like
get way meta.
we'll go on a tangent over here and then
Yeah, because
if the
after
flow
we
is
go
working,
to
you
DMT,
come back.
we never stop tripping.
Yes.
That's
No,
right.
I feel like I see the world in
It
fractals
opens you
all the
up.
time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whoa.
And so things that we've learned over 3 seasons or 4 seasons of interviewing people is that we do want to make sure that we don't just jump into why you're interesting at the beginning, but we take time to actually like get to know people. What's your background? What do you like to share about your childhood and how you got to where you are? Because oftentimes we would just jump into whatever topic we were all hot to talk about, and then people would be like, who is this person again?
Yeah.
So that's something that we have added, and so I appreciate you giving us a picture of what you care to share about your childhood and your life before this moment now with the 15-month-old kid and an Instagram account and getting ready to start a podcast.
Yeah.
So
And you guys can ask any questions that you want as well.
Yeah.
in the
Ask
chat
away.
box.
this is why we had the chatbot. I loved it. Was great I had some of your fans on Instagram messaging me and being like, when is the show? What are you gonna do? Can I watch it afterwards? And that's great. You can absolutely share this with people after the fact. It's going to be saved on Facebook and YouTube for later,
And
and
Twitch,
then
yeah.
we'll eventually make the podcast audio when I get back to my studio. So,
Yeah.
but right now you're the lucky ones.
You can be in on the conversation
And you
if
can
you
ask
have
the
any
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have any, because we're just like, I'm loving this psychedelic mode that we're in right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so back to what I was saying
Karen.
about 5-MeO though. It's interesting because more than often, what my experience is with Bufo specifically is that I have so much pent up anger that I'm dealing with, because anger is my main trauma response that I'm working with
Right.
consistently, because I had one of my parents was very overpowering verbally, and then the other one gave me a lot of responsibility. So I constantly feel like, fucking listen to me. Like, fucking listen to me. So, and then that makes me get 10 steps ahead of everyone in my life, and then resenting them for not being me.
Right.
It's like super stupid. So that's what I'm working with. And so when I go into any of the medicine, I'm like, I need to get rid of this anger. I need to figure out like how. So I'm always kind of afraid. My ego is like, oh my God, I'm being such a fucking cunt this week, you know? Like, I'm gonna get nailed.
And
Then-
you're judging yourself about it, yourself about it.
So then I go in, and the medicine's just like, you are pure love and bliss, and we love you, and it's like the
Everything's
most
fine.
blissful experience of my life.
Hi, guy.
Hold, please.
Doing a good job.
Nobody work, nobody get paid.
That's right.
Thanks, Ben. Oh, we're appreciating him. We're so grateful to have the privilege to have someone that blow dries our pool deck for us.
One thing I want to talk. I'll talk loud
You talk,
because I
you got
have
a
a
big
big cat voice. I love talking about psychedelics and the experiences and the lessons. I think for people who've never done those things, there's a bridge that can't be crossed. Until you've had an experience, there's certain things that can't be conveyed about that. And it starts to just go into gobbledygook.
You're like, maybe you were just crazy.
And I think there may be an impression that people say, oh, you just do psychedelics and you see all this stuff. But from my perspective, it's not just the event but it's the person who came to the event and the work they had done, and the work that gets done after the lesson. Because you're not just doing psychedelics and then waiting and then doing it again. There's tons of work in between that I think is really important.
And your whole mind gets changed.
The medicine stays with you.
You experience a deeper sense of connection to other human beings, and then a greater sense of forgiveness comes over you, and the time between where you previously would have reacted, that distance gets larger. You're able to actually take a deep breath, calm yourself, and then decide to respond. So, like for me, since the last time I sat with the medicine, a couple triggering things have come up for me, and I go on a walk now, which I never did before.
Wow.
I go on a walk now, and I have the conversation with the person, and I'm like, fuck you, I'm fucking pissed at you. What I'm feeling is anger. What I'm feeling is sadness. And I'm not blaming though anymore. I'm just saying,
working with your anger.
What I'm feeling in response to what you're showing me is this. And then it's my job to work with it because they're their own thing, and I'm not going to change that.
Right.
This emotion that I'm experiencing is mine, and what I do with that is what affects my life moving forward.
You're talking
not
about
trying to change this.
You're talking about radical responsibility.
Yeah.
At this point, like you're talking about, because what we're entrained to in the West, I think, is that it's always somebody else's fault. How you are making me angry, you are making me sad, you broke my heart, you know, like and getting to the point where we can be independent enough of other people's effect on our lives, where absolutely you have accountability for harm, you have accountability for abuse, but inside that realm where there isn't like harm or abuse, you have radical self-knowledge, radical responsibility for where your triggers are, and radical responsibility for your emotions.
From the medicine, because when you experience psychedelics, your capacity for compassion goes like this.
Yes.
Because your ability to be in the moment and to relax and enjoy it transforms radically. You're able to feel the moment with so much more joy than you experienced before, that you're no longer in resistance to it. You've accepted that you are it and there's nowhere to go, so you might as well just fucking enjoy it.
Right.
And then from there, you start dealing with people differently, because you start realizing that it's about the journey, not the destination, right? It's like a moment.
All that cheesy shit is so true.
It's all fucking true. It's like,
I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna say that thing that people put on the wall over their bed.
yeah, I do, and I just don't really care either.
So to play devil's advocate, Dark and I go back and forth over whether or not his perspective is that the medicine does not give you anything you don't already have. And I think I've experienced some things where I felt as though there really is wellness in these medicines to be accessed and integrated that I did not have in myself. And one thing that we've always been, the balance of that we've always been careful of is, like, LSD is not going to save your life. It's not just going to come in and bitch slap your psyche into a better psyche. Have you had some experiences where you didn't get what you meant to come get, or you've heard of someone, just for perspective, for contrast, because I think we've all had experiences where people
who have done acid, and now they this one person I've heard of, who some of my friends know their family, they think they're a banana now from LSD.
Right.
Like they
permanent banana.
Thought they were a banana, and then they fucking stayed that way.
Yeah.
I personally haven't done LSD in years, and I don't necessarily vibe with LSD because it's
or
synthetic.
Other things.
But that's why I like to work with things like mushrooms or ayahuasca, because they're a natural energy plant of the earth with its own consciousness. My most recent experience with grandmother ayahuasca, I had a very interesting experience where the first night I didn't really trip at all, but I was feeling some pain in my abdomen after giving birth, my womb and everything that's so much different, right? And so I was having trouble just in that space, was feeling like really hard. My heart chakra was feeling really blocked up.
Like armored.
And and so I experienced her going in there, and I could look at it like, oh, that wasn't me doing this. That was her intelligence. But she used the intelligence of my body, my organs, to move energy, to expand it. My stomach got so big. It was like a 3-month pregnant belly in ceremony, moving this energy around, and I felt her in there like a snake. And it felt like I had a bladder infection and I couldn't stop trying to pee.
Right, I know that feeling.
As soon as the medicine wore off, it was gone. My stomach was back down, the bladder sensations were gone, and it felt better. And I had my body worker come, and he said that it felt better too, because I've been working with him doing Reiki and
trying to release whatever was going on there.
We had done a lot of work there, but she came in and really like finished that up for me. So it's not always going to take you. She gives you exactly what you need.
You get a
One
lot
of my
homework
friends,
sometimes.
when we did DMT the first time, we all took turns, like you said, and she didn't experience anything except for calmness, because she had so much anxiety about the moment, about life, about everything. She just felt calm. Then she smoked a little bit more, and the same moment was repeating itself over and over again, and she saw how she does that all the time. And
Just
she
running
just
it.
reruns the same experience in her head over and over again, analyzing it, trying to make it be different without being in the present moment.
Yes.
Right.
So then the medicine showed her that, and boom, broke her out of that. And then she had a beautiful psychedelic experience.
Wow, but she had to do like
but
2
she had
rounds.
to get in her body first. She had to go 3 times to even have the experience of going out. She had to get comfortable with her foundation. When I was in Egypt, I saw this psychic man. He owns this like 15,000-year oilery. His ancestors, his whole lineage, have been making these sacred oils in Egypt.
I'm gonna trade places with you.
Yeah.
We'll do musical chairs.
His third eye is wide open, and so he's able to see like everything. And he basically told me, you have a really strong connection to the spirit, but it's time to basically create a foundation for you to come into your body now. And then I went to Bali, and I was still like really working through some trauma stuff there. Like, that's a whole fucking podcast right there.
Just the whole
in itself.
Phase of Bali.
But then I met a healer there, and he's like a world-renowned, like, I think he's from Australia or something, and he's like really legit, like mind, body, soul trainer, healer. And he just looked at me and he was like, you need to ask yourself what traumatized you so much that you left your body and you're still not coming back into it yet. And that question sent me on like a journey up until now, like 3 years of just like, what was it? How is it affecting me in my actions and responses? Because that's shaping my life. It's like, and all we can really do is be thrown around the planet until we understand where we orient ourselves.
But these experiences are definitely, I feel like, catalytic experiences. A lot of people talk about having visions and having those moments, but I've seen people who I would say abuse that medicine. Where, like, I've done ayahuasca 100 times. I'm like, obviously not doing it right. Because you shouldn't have to do it 100 times.
No, and you should be, like, honoring her as such that you don't, like...
Keep knocking on the door?
Yeah, exactly. And
Making
it's like,
her do your homework for you.
The way that I see it is like a rite of passage. It's like when I'm ready for a rite of passage, my intention gets really clear. I'm very uncomfortable in my life, and I'm very aware of what I need to change. And I've done the journaling, I've done everything to become aware of what I need to change. And then when I go into the ceremony, I'm releasing any walls that block myself off from doing it.
I think this is what a lot of people leave out of the psychedelic discussions that I've watched and become. Often these discussions are for people who are steeped in it, who've done it over and over and over, or it's almost like a voyeuristic thing of like, whoa, we went to space and you didn't. And I think I like having more discussions around the trips are kind of like punctuations of long paragraphs and sentences before and afterwards. And it's almost like those moments can give you the assignment, but then there's a lot of homework to be done to unpack that information. For myself, some of the hardest trips that I've had have been my most educational. The ones where I felt like if I didn't do it again soon afterwards, I would probably never do it again because it was so terrifying or scary.
Yeah.
And have you ever had those experiences just to sort of balance out the thing? Because some people don't. Some people never really have the big challenge of like having the deep fear come up. Some people just go into love and they always are going into some sort of loving thing. Have you ever had like a big scary challenge?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every time that I've done it, there's fear, there's challenge, but it's like as much fear and as much discomfort, there's equal joy
you
and
get the other side.
bliss. Yeah, so like the first time, that's why I like to do it in threes.
Right.
Because the first night is very light. She's kind of like, this is what we're going to be working with. This is how I'm going to do it. Like, and then the second night is like, boom. And then the third night's like, integration. Like, this is who you are, and this is what you have to do now. It's like, so the second night of my first time, what I experienced was I was meditating like this, with my eyes like this, and I, boom, opened my third eye, and this portal opened in front of me, and all of a sudden I could see the matrix, but it was all hieroglyphs. Ooh. And I could read hieroglyphs, and hieroglyphs made up the entire reality, and then thousands of people were lined up in front of me like terracotta soldiers, and it was the first time I ever saw spirits. And I felt fear, and I was like, whoa, and then a voice came and said, they're all you. And I was like, oh. So then my consciousness, boom, left my body, and I went, like, I'll never forget the visual of it. I went through all of them so fast, like an owl. And the first night, an owl landed on my shoulders. I was born as a baby owl, and I learned to fly. So it was almost like that prepared my consciousness to come out and be able to fly. Because in Norse mythology, they say, and in Hawaiian, it's called your Aumakua. It's a spirit guide. In Norse mythology, it's called your Fylgja. And basically, the idea is that before you're born, you have this animal who's standing, watching you decide to become a human, and what your purpose is, what your blueprint is, and watches as you're born. And then once you reach places in your journey, which is, we'll call this your familiar, you go through your initiations, your familiar, Fylgja, Aumakua comes back, and you start remembering what the fuck you're doing, because they're bringing the memory to you because you've done the work necessary to be able to understand, okay, this is my divine purpose in this life. Then you rise from the victim to the hero of your journey, and that's when it begins. So I flew through the consciousness, and I started assimilating like all that business, and I slowed down at 2 different lifetimes. One as a man alchemist in like the time of the Renaissance, and then another as a high priestess in ancient Egypt or Atlantis or whatever you would want to call it. And I was spinning an ankh from finger to finger, walking through.
What's ankh?
It's like the cross with the loop at the top.
It looks like this.
Oh, I see.
The line is more defined. So I was spinning that from finger to finger. It represents the balance of the masculine and the feminine.
Oh, gotcha.
So
it sort of looks like those 2 signs combined with each other a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So I remember the layout perfectly. It was a white temple, huge tall ceilings, pillars, a blue bed to the right of the room, a little shelf with a vase on it, and there was a small hill right outside, and the Nile was flowing between the temple and the hill. And the floor was cold beneath my feet. It was very
so visceral.
Surreal. Or
very
visceral, yeah.
Present. And so after that, then I kind of was in my body, and I was experiencing like an ego death. And basically my higher self, I was in the perspective of my higher self. I was looking down at this body, and I was pulling black sludge out of my body, just cleaning it, like gross, gross, gross. pulling this out. And meanwhile, my physical body's experiencing being born as a butterfly from being a caterpillar. Like, that was what my experience was. It felt like I was breaking out of a cocoon, and I could finally breathe, but I was one with the air, so there was no inhalation and exhalation because everything is one. So then I felt like I couldn't breathe because I was breath. And it was this weird, like...
Yes,
so
but yes.
I was just like... you know, and I couldn't get a breath because I just was everything. So that was super intense. And that's what an ego death really is. Like, you realize your ego is just a tool for your spirit to ground itself into your physical body as a temple.
So this is the hard thing that's I think a lot of people get up against their ego and they have to leave it aside.
Well, your ego's the one who feels the fear because your ego's bubble is about to get popped.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And then, so the more that you do this work, though, the more that your higher self enters and dwells within the temple space, and your ego takes a back seat and makes you lunch. It's like your ego is like the butler of your reality. Your ego serves your spirit.
Right.
It's like your ego is not the one being served. Your ego is the servant.
It's sort of like a Dunning-Kruger effect, but internal. Like, where the part that thinks it knows everything is actually the thing that knows the least, and the thing that knows everything is less inclined to go and take charge. So you have to have that conversation internally. I think that's been an experience with a lot of people, is that ego death part. First time I did DMT, I spent 30 days like quit smoking cigarettes, stopped drinking alcohol, cleaned out my whole stuff. So I think when I went, I was really ready, and I had the same vision of a wall of petroglyphs that didn't look Egyptian, or they were like nothing I had ever seen before, but I knew exactly what it all meant.
Yep.
A very similar experience.
Lower Shell would like to hear more about Mahina's most remembered and profound past life experiences.
I would have to say they're very interesting. Like, they're kind of random. I have a really strong memory of my like Egyptian one. Then I have one as an old crone. Then I have one as a girl who lived in a forest with like one of seven brothers and sisters, maybe more or less. But that was a really weird one too. And they all come to me in dreams.
Then you will be sleeping at night in this life, and you will have a dream where you're in that life.
So past life experiences don't really come to me all at once. What happens is that I'll be shown visions. I'll honor those visions by recording them, journaling them, giving them attention, my awareness. And then because of that, I create a space where I'm basically researching myself.
Okay.
And I create magnetism for the memory to have a place to land.
Here, you can have the spot again. I'm going to move the camera.
I basically cultivate a relationship with my expanded self. So I've done that mainly with my Egyptian lives because I felt like those were the key trainings I prepared for this lifetime with. So I feel that the past life experiences that we're most closely connected to are the ones that have the most use now in this life.
Okay. All right.
And so I guess those past life, my number one past life experience started coming to me after the ayahuasca because I met that high priestess version of myself, and then I really started stepping into that consciousness and into that awareness. And because of that, I started having really profound dreams of everything I learned as a high priestess, all of that information coming back. Certain people brought books into my life, and these books were like written by Hermes Trismegistus and like
Who's that?
Pythagoras, and I would sit down and read them in one sitting and understand everything that they said.
In your dream?
No, in real life.
Yeah, that's the beginning of sort of mysticism, is Hermes, like Western, what's considered Western mysticism.
Yeah, so that's kind of, past lives are an interesting thing, but one story that might be easier to share that kind of is really fascinating is when I was 15, I kind of started on Tumblr. Like, people would ask me questions because they saw me taking all these pictures in Hawaii, and everyone creates this fantasy about living in a beautiful place, but they don't really know that there's still like hardship and all these things behind
my environment will make my life better.
Just beautiful photos. Like,
yeah.
So because of that, I was aware of that even as a teenager, that I didn't want people to think that my life was as beautiful as it looked all the time, but I also didn't want to seem ungrateful. So that's why I had this balance of like taking these beautiful photos, but then on Tumblr talking about the real shit.
Oh, nice.
So people would come to me and ask me about my childhood and this and that, and we would have this conversation there. And because of that, there was an openness between me and the people there where we were all just like chilling out and talking like this. And so this girl messaged me one day, and she said that she had had a past life regression and had felt really connected with everything that I was sharing, and that it came through in the past life regression that I was her great-grandmother in a coven of witches. And so I was like, whoa, that's trippy as fuck.
Yeah.
What's past life regression? What's hypnosis? Didn't know.
So is that where you started finding?
So,
it was through those conversations.
Okay.
Yeah, so then it started opening up, and I was like, oh, interesting. So I started buying books.
And wait, how old was this?
15.
Okay, so like.
This was right around I had the out-of-body experience, like.
And then you just started following it
and switching from
having the
emotions to mind.
conversations. Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, from there, then I think I was 18, and my auntie Mahina, who I'm named after, is like just like me, but even more, because her father was a shaman. So he, like, yeah, so she helps me a lot. She's always given me books, this, that. And she had a friend who was a past life regressionist. So we went down to the beach, and I had my first past life regression, and boom, she was like, you were a great grandmother in a coven of witches, and they all died because of what you taught them. So you have to now.
Whoops.
So you,
Sorry.
I basically had died. And after I died, they all were burned at the stake because I was no longer there to protect them. And the knowledge that they had gotten from what I taught them was a threat to the church, to everyone. So they were all killed. So then I saw them all of them came to me, and I knew them by name, and I put wings on their back, and I set them free with forgiveness into the sunset at this beach that we were at. It was very powerful. So then, fast forward, I do the ayahuasca, and this is the second ceremony that I ever did, and it was a 3-nighter as well, and boom, right back to Egypt. Anubis came and got me. I went through these huge hieroglyphic crystal gates, and my soul was weighed against the feather by Tehote and Ma'at.
Yep.
Then I passed through, saw the Sphinx. He welcomed me home telepathically, and I started downloading all of my memories from other areas of that priestess lifetime. Then I settled into my body, and I felt her in my body moving me like a cat, like water. And I was dancing, like doing these Egyptian dances, settling into my flesh. And then all of a sudden, I was just relaxing, like literally like a cat, stretching, doing all the things. Then I look into the corner of the room, and I fucking see the crone. She's sitting there. She's looking over at me, and
the great-grandmother, the great-grandmother from the witch coven.
So she's there in this black cloak with this staff, and my whole family's behind her, and I'm like, whoa.
Your present-day Hawaii family?
No.
Or no, the witch family. Okay.
Yes, but everyone, not just the women. In the past life regression, it was the women, because only the women were killed.
Right.
So in this, I saw the boys, the men too. The whole family was there. She walked over, she turned, sat down on top of me, and I started going like this, pulling, all integrating and healing what had been broken through that. I could see a nose on top of mine, and when my hand slowed down in front of my face, I saw her old hand, but then I saw mine more real, and I literally said, I'm young again.
Wow.
I said, I'm young again. And that power that came from that, I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, to feel so crippled and using a cane, and then boom, in a fucking 22-year-old body.
Yes.
I was like,
How sweet is that?
holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
It was like being in a fucking Ferrari for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we could work with this. So that was wild. And the craziest thing about that, though, is that I met one of my best friends in this specific ceremony. She was there for the last 2 nights, and she messaged me on Instagram, and I have screenshots to prove this. She messaged me on Instagram the day after the ceremony ended, and she said, hey, I just wanted to share a vision that I had of last night's ceremony. And I was called to sit up and look towards you at one point, and a silver staircase appeared in front of you. A grandmother crone stepped down it with a cane, and Isis, like an Egyptian goddess, appeared through a portal in her crown chakra. Her wings stretched over the whole island, which I had been flying as an owl again.
Yes.
Right.
And side note, I was flying as an owl for what felt like centuries. The wings folded up into my chest. I saw the feathers retract. It was like 8:30 the first night. Next day, my grandma asked me what I was doing at that time. Tell her I was an owl. She said, yeah, one came out of nowhere and almost hit me. So it was like, interesting. So then, my friend's vision, the wings stretch across the whole island, and she reaches out with a blue finger and touches my third eye and sends a silver wave through my whole body.
This was what your friend saw happening.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which was what happened to me.
Yes.
It was just like a parallel version of myself.
Mhm.
I believe that spiritually, there are these archetypes. Some people like to call them gods and goddesses. The Egyptians call them the Netiru, forces of nature embodied as archetypes. I believe that there are these archetypes, and each of us are home in one specific god or goddess head. So you and I might be in the cells of the body of Isis together.
Yeah.
Me and some of my friends were in
Right.
the cells of the body of Isis together. Some of my other friends, they're in the cells of the body of Hathor together. And maybe even, we're not even just in the cell of one at all. Maybe they're all these archetypes, and we, through choice, get to explore the cells of all these bodies of these archetypes, and can either dwell in the lower chakras of these bodies of consciousness or rise into the crown and get the knowledge from this space. But I think that's what psychedelics give us, is we lose the attachment to one identity, and then we're able to travel across space and time throughout all that exists, because there is no, it's all the isness. It's all the isness. It's all happening right here. And that's what you get access to. When you get out of your concept of self, you can honor yourself and your body and have fun with it, dress it up, adorn it, play with it, have fucking fun. But at the end of the day, it's about learning and expanding and sharing and creating and having fun. Fun is like the number one thing that we're supposed to
We
be
should be
doing.
able to have it.
Yeah.
Isabella Cash says, I'm so happy you are finally going through this, Mahina. I've been following for a long while now, reading your transmissions. Taking in the code you share has been a beautiful blessing in my life. You are an incredible storyteller.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deb Lynch says these types of experiences are endangered as the butler disallows their admittance into the narrative.
Yeah.
The butler.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
butler is
Yeah.
such a nice word for it. Because
Yeah.
you guys
I
mentioned
call
the
it
butler.
I call it the mall cop.
But you had
yeah.
mentioned it
The
being a butler
Monica.
earlier.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that your ego sits down and makes you a sandwich rather than being in charge anymore.
Yeah.
Oh
like that.
yeah, right.
And we're working on getting the ego to take on that role, where whatever the me is in charge rather than the ego being in charge.
Yeah, and it's really, that's what they say about the fact that we're just the observer and the witnesser. That's what we're doing right now. We're having a conversation about what we're noticing. So we're in our consciousness right now. But then, as soon as we start talking, the ego starts talking to us. And then it's like, you don't have a choice. I'm in control. this day sucked. Do you believe me? Yeah, then it does now.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Haha, got you. Low Rochelle is no, sorry.
But really quick, I would like to say something about psychedelics that's very, very, very important. We should never just jump right into them. If it doesn't feel right for you, it probably isn't.
Is that?
And if you're afraid to go there, then research it and start looking into spiritual stuff like, I don't know, quantum mechanics, quantum physics. Start understanding the science and the spirituality, the nature of our reality, before diving into trying to have this experience, because one of the biggest things about having these experiences is your ability to integrate them into something that can be helpful for your life. And I see a lot of people who don't really feel like they have the support to get that and to integrate properly, and that can do more harm than good, because you might just end up floating around thinking, which for me in the beginning of my journey, when I had all those memories and this and that was a lot to integrate. Like, here I am now, more comfortable with the idea of it, but it took me years to feel comfortable with everything that I had seen, and then to realize how it could help and benefit my reality now. Like, it was a huge, like, wait, what? Like, I'm God? Blah, blah, blah. My ego still came back. It was like, oh my God, then da-da-da-da-da. And then it was like, you know, it sends you on
It's
this
battling
whole...
your concept of God is the problem.
Yeah.
Like, we're fed an idea of what God is. And then it's like that idea keeps us from ever actually having communion or communication or realization of,
Well,
because
and
we can't
I
get around the
think that
concept.
the label of God kind of disempowers us, because people, all throughout time, people are kind of just like, you know, seeing these amazing things happen, and then they're like, oh, that's God. When really they could take some of that and be like, we did that. You know what I mean? Like, and be grateful for their own energy having participated in bringing them the thing that they want.
There was a phrase, I think it was Robert Anton Wilson.
I pray to myself because I'm the one who's gonna do the work.
Like, come on,
so
Mahina.
it's kind of like an affirmation.
Right.
I'm like, listen.
That's a lot of responsibility, and that's scary for people.
Like, listen, self. You know, like, I pray to a God and a self, because the God that I believe is the universe that I can't do, right? I can't hold the universe and conduct all these divine happenings. That is the goddess. That is the God, or spirit, universe, whatever word you'd like to call it. But I do know that it's just as important to acknowledge my responsibility to take action, which is why I have that balance there. Because I'm not just going to give it all to that force and then expect it to happen for me. It's like, I have to know that if it's meant for me, it'll find me, and then also exercise, also drink enough water, also make sure to say yes to the thing that's uncomfortable, even though it's going to get me from here to there, and then show up. Like, that's on me. That's not on the universe.
Robert Anton Wilson said that the only true communication is that between equals. And that was something that set me off, because I think I had been battling a God concept that I was either trying to get over or trying to get recognition from. And that phrase, communication is only that between, it can only occur between equals. It made me realize that you're either like praying for something from God, or you're cursing God for not getting what you want or whatever. And the idea of actually having to enter into communication meant to raise yourself to a point where you could have that communication. And suddenly it was no longer about petitioning God, but it was about building the ability to have, to interact with divinity.
Yeah.
Instead of
and
just
to
being
see yourself
subject
worthy of it,
to divinity.
Which is like, we've all
That's
been programmed to be so unworthy and obedient, right? Because we're being programmed as slaves for people who just want all the money and power in the world. So it's like we have to get past that into aligning with our inherent worthiness, and then coming into that communication because it's our birthright.
Are you familiar with Terence McKenna?
Yeah.
Okay, so to go back to something you were saying earlier about what you're pulling out of the experience, these psychedelic experiences, something he said that I love this phrase is, he's like, you're going out in a little boat and you're dropping a net down into the depths. And you want to have your net just so that you're not, all the little things that are not important get to go through the net. but you don't want to catch things that are so big that they're going to wreck your boat. And I think for a long time I was trying to catch the biggest whale ever with a little tiny net and
Right
a little
now.
tiny boat. And he gave me the permission to sort of actually take what I need for dinner at the time. To have the net be something to capture things that I can manage and work with, rather than trying to take on the heroic task of like understanding all and everything, because that sometimes makes it hard to pay rent. When you come back out and you're like, I know everything. They're like, your electric bill is due. I'm like, I don't know how to pay that though. And having to manage that terrain between sort of interacting with this sort of timeless
and you don't
limitness.
know everything. You were
Exactly.
just being given the vision.
Maybe a fuck ton lot at once.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I've been working on not saying is I know. Because it's one of those things that I say that just kind of comes out and I'm like, oh, I know. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, you're basically telling the universe that you know all the time. And then they can't tell you anything. So I have to stop proclaiming that I know so that I can be taught.
Still have the humility to learn new
because that's
things.
like, I want to be receptive, right? Yeah. But just to finish up on the integration topic, this last time that I sat with the medicine, I actually worked with a hypnotherapist. So I'm in a 12-week hypnotherapy specifically for the ayahuasca. And that way it was like a big investment for me to do both, and I took it very seriously. My intentions were very clear. I sat with her 3 sessions before, and now I have 9 left or something like that, 8 left. And that's been profound for my experience, because she prepared my subconscious to let down all resistances towards it. She actually specializes in that, like ayahuasca and
integrating the ayahuasca experience into your regular life.
So she prepares
like
your
a long-term
subconscious to
trip sitter.
accept it.
Yeah.
She prepares your subconscious to accept it as not a threat, but as an old friend, and then helps you to integrate the process in a way that she's like, she helps me get to the bottom of what my intention is, what changes I want to see in my life, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and then create a foundation and a pathway for me to kind of get there. It's a lot of work,
Doing that kind of
I
work.
take it seriously, but playfully.
You're not.
If you're not having fun, then you're not going to get it done.
It's
That's been a
so
phrase I tell
fun.
myself all the time.
And it's my
If I'm
passion.
losing my sense of humor or I'm losing the sense of play involved, I've taken things too serious. Is what I call going native. I get caught up in the story and I don't get to see the larger play involved.
So Isabella asked this question a while ago, and I didn't have a way to bring it in organically at that time. So she brought it back up. So thank you very much for bringing that back to our awareness. Mahina, what would you say for people who don't have a very visual mind in their dreams and waking life? And then additionally, could it be a faculty that was misused or broken in a past life? Can this be repaired? And she asked this when we were talking about your visions as a child and all your dreams and the astral projection experiences and things.
I would say that right now I'm actually learning a lot about this, because one of my intentions for my last ceremony was to activate my clairvoyant abilities to a greater extent. And so now all of my dreams are showing me what that's going to be like, and if I really want that. So I'm having these I'm predicting the future and seeing deeper into things that are hard to see. They're not comfortable. And what that's teaching me about visuals and what we're able to see is that if you have a resistance or a fear to something, you're not going to allow it for yourself.
Right.
So I would say to get in a journaling relationship with yourself, or meditation, or even out loud conversation with yourself, and start asking to see. Just ask.
Asking what?
To see.
To see.
To see in the dream.
Okay.
To activate your inner vision
And to go to sleep with intention.
Yeah.
I think journaling is like one of the most important things I ever did in my life.
Is so important, and you can just say the most random things in there. I like to do automatic writing. And then also another thing that could help is that you could make a sigil or a symbol just play around with shapes and let it come to you. Be inspired by nature. Like, for example, if you're near the water and you want to have a dream about water, or you want to have a dream about a mountain, what's a symbol that you could make with shapes of water and shapes of the mountain? The reason for this is that the more that you draw this symbol, the more that you make this sigil your own, this is the language of the subconscious. So sigils and symbols actually have the ability to go way deeper than any language.
Words, right.
Because it's not a language that we had to learn. It's something that we experience as an inherent mathematic creator of our reality. So it's the more that you learn. Like, I have a friend who dreamt her boyfriend's tattoo, and it's like a Hawaiian tattoo, right? And because she had the knowledge of what the symbol meant, and she developed an emotional relationship to her culture, she was able to understand what it meant in her dream, and then he got it tattooed, and now it really means something. Because symbols cross over, and knowledge of symbols, knowledge of mountains, of fire, water, earth, air, and spirit, they give us a language of feeling to communicate with ourselves on a bigger. It's just.
So if I'll reinterpret that in some of the ways that I'm seeing it, it sounds like you're talking about conjuring to an extent, where people are. Isabella is saying, like, what about if people don't have a good. They don't feel as though they have a good imagination. They don't feel as though they're very visual people, or that they remember their dreams. And you're speaking about this. It could be a magic or it could be a science, but this magic of conjuring something, where if you want something in your life, you begin to create it in your life. So you
create a place for it.
And you're also, if I can just, and you're also speaking about basically going back to a 101 class. We sort of think of like imagination and dreams as like this thing people just have, and it's just crazy. And it's like, what if you were a college professor and you turned how to dream into a 101 college class? And you're speaking about, like, pick a theme, even if it's not what you eventually hope to dream about. You just say, I'm going to think about water, and you spend your day life thinking about noticing everywhere that you see and experience water during the day. And then you draw water, and you listen to water, and you just start meditating on it to the point that it becomes very real and present in your imagination. You're noticing it all around you. We spend so much time being content consumers, and the concept of content creation lives on the internet as well as in our lives. We feel very reactive in our lives, in the West especially, a lot of the time, I think. And so to become a person that is like, no, now I'm going to I'm going to turn the dial up on water in my life, and notice all the water, and look at all the water, and think about water, and wear a water necklace, and wear blue clothes, and spend more time swimming, and then you're creating, you're calling this imagination of water deeper into your psyche and into your awareness in a way that can potentially affect your dreams. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, and we all have certain things that we're really good at, like, and certain things that we're interested in, whereas others are not. And I think if you don't have, like, if you're not a visual person, maybe it's just not what you've been focused on. And so maybe this is the life where you're having a yearning for it, you're having a desire for it, and so now it's time to explore it. And it doesn't mean you're not capable of it, it just means that you have to begin.
You don't go to the gym once and get the body.
Yeah, and I don't think that I just have this ability. I think that that's a part of my priestess initiations. From the memories of those other lifetimes, one of the main things that we would study in the temple was how to travel into altered states of consciousness through purely meditation and a very focused diet of very minimal things, and maintain full consciousness and be able to remember every single detail, and then bring it back, sit up, and there's your teacher, your high priest is there, or high priestess. They record every single thing that you say. And that starts training you. And so that
and then you can go back and read it and reaffirm what's in your memory with
so
words.
that practice came with me into this life. I've always recorded my dreams, whether it's on audio. I would
just
for a
wake
while
up and start
there.
saying stuff.
I would record in my sleep. One time, I had this dream that I came and I planted this caduceus in my spine. Boom.
What's a caduceus?
It's a staff of life. So it's on the ambulance, only the masculine snake's there. There's one snake, wings.
Oh,
it's a medical symbol for Hermes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
medical
but in ancient Egypt, it's the staff of life, and it was used to heal people. It was infused with great magic. So in this dream, I came, I planted the staff of life in my spine, and wings grew out of it. And that's why I have this tattoo on my back. They're owl wings, and the eye of Horus is like the all-seeing eye at the top, right? And then this down my back, it says, I am a woman and a man dancing in a body that lends itself to adaptations. So that's my version of the two snakes. And the two snakes are like these reptilian brain urges that we have to stay in this fear survival mindset. But once you rise past that through initiations, whether they're modern or ancient, you gain your wings, your consciousness to perceive across all spaces and times and dimensions. Then you rise into the lion consciousness,
rather than
the
a false binary,
omniscient consciousness that is all things. And so I recorded that dream, and what I said when I was recording it was, the primal animal will be selected in totality to initiate freedom in the individual. Precise study, observation, awareness. It was very like, this is your lesson, you know? And it was like the primal animal, like the human, my primal animal is selected in totality to awaken to itself and to initiate freedom in the individual, to expand past my awareness of just Mahina and into the expanded self that we all are.
Choosing yourself rather than being in resistance to yourself all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it. So,
I don't know how much time we have left, so maybe we should have them do some questions because it's 1:30.
It is, yes. And the Baron might be back soon.
The bye-bye.
The baby.
Yeah.
Couple last questions. When do you feel as though you can commit to when you're going to bring your podcast out?
Oh, as soon as you help me.
Oh. All right, we're going to get you set up.
I need her assistance.
We're going to get you set up.
So maybe like this month. I don't know.
Okay.
I think. When are you guys here till? And you guys are going to be staying here.
Yeah.
Right?
So we can workshop that over the next couple of days. Easy peasy.
Okay. Well, there's
get you
an
set up.
for
That's
that.
so exciting. And then we can talk about a workflow, and we can get you on a podcast hosting site, just really fast. Very nice. Okay, so we'll do that and get you posted about it.
Yay.
And then Lower Shell says, I'd love to hear about Mahina's most remembered. Nope, she already read that one already. Okay. Most treasured books / what you're reading right now.
So I just finished this one last night. It's called A Happy Pocket Full of Money, and it's basically it's a quantum understanding of wealth and happiness. And he's fucking amazing. He was the creative.
Who's the author?
David Cameron Giocondi.
Okay.
He was the creative consultant for The Secret when they made it into a movie.
Wow.
So he's a genius. Like everything that he's talking about really helped me view wealth and finance in a different way, because I want to live a life that's comfortable, enjoyable, and I know that every single one of us is worthy of that.
I would like to not suffer scarcity.
Yeah.
So to my surprise, when he starts talking about finance, he says it's actually important to pay taxes, to give back to the community, right? 10% to taxes, 10% to charity, 10% to something else, 70%. 10 for investments, 70 for your enjoyment.
Right.
So 10, 10, 10, 70.
Right.
And I liked that because it's like, okay, yeah. So that was one book that I just finished that I absolutely loved. It was very helpful for me in so many ways. Like, it helped me prepare for my ayahuasca experience that I had. It's just a quantum understanding of us in relation to the modern world and how to optimize what it can do for us and what we can do for it. Just creating right relationships.
Right.
And then another one, which I'm about to start reading that I'm really excited about, is called The Alphabet versus the Goddess. And so this is about how like modern language is basically like right-brained, or would it be left-brained? Yeah, a left-brained thing. Whereas hieroglyphs, and I don't know if they talk about this specifically, but I'm just giving an example of my own belief of what this could be. Because I was actually watching a YouTube video about hieroglyphs and how they worked in the subconscious of the ancients. And hieroglyphs are a left and right brain language because there's not just rigid lines and this.
You have to interpret.
It's a masculine and feminine language. So both sides of your brain are illuminated when reading hieroglyphs, if you know how. So that book was brought up in a conversation about hieroglyphs, the alphabet versus the goddess.
Do you have a favorite, like a very pivotal book from a long time ago that you just keep recommending to people all the time?
I mean, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I don't know how many times I've read that. Also, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Yes,
huge. And then one on numerology that's really helped is called Life Cycles by Christine Delory. It's your journey to emotional freedom. And it's basically about how like the energies of numbers work throughout the years of our lives and the months of our lives, and how the cycle that we're in numerologically influences what we're experiencing. And it's crazy how on point it is.
So what was the Khalil Gibran book?
The Prophet.
The Prophet, yeah.
So yeah, and I'm obsessed with rare occult texts.
Everybody knows what to get you for your birthday then. But please be very careful opening occult books that you receive in the mail. You know, just like like if some rando on Instagram like sends you like, we're gonna get her occult books, and then somebody might send you something
dark.
Well, you just don't fucking know, you know.
Yeah, like, no, I don't want them
sending arsenic in the mail is so old
school. Relationship I have with myself. It's like a self-love thing I have going on, and it's honestly so hard to gift someone something like that because it's such a very specific
like attraction.
Some are just trash. Some are just like pseudo-intelligent, wordy motherfuckers who just say a lot about a tiny, like blow this up to that.
Right.
And it's like you didn't need all that just to say this.
I found myself doing this sort of serpentine, like this book, because of somebody who reviewed it on the back, sparked me, and then I found that person, and it was very organic.
Yeah.
Finding the trail of breadcrumbs left in books and things over time.
So Boyce Brown popped in earlier to let us know that there are actually some courses for
Psychedelic integration.
Psychedelic integrator certificates.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So naropa.edu.
Oh, I love Naropa. I was gonna go there.
In Boulder?
Yeah, not in Boulder, but thanks to COVID, it's all online now. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
And the California Institute of Integral Studies, he shared some links in the chat of various places that offer like trip sitter certificates.
Is there a way to save all these links?
Yeah.
It'll be in the feed.
It's all there. But yes, I won't close this until we copy pasta them
And
to
save
something
them.
for you. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, boys.
Yeah.
We should totally wrap it up. It's been a very interesting show today. I'm curious to see how the audio is going to turn out. We should just do another conversation.
We should keep doing conversations. I have one question I wanted to ask you about, because the last few years of our show, we've been doing like trauma awareness, trying to understand what the hell's going on in the world, like a lot of sleuthing about how to get an orientation of where we personally are in the larger scheme of things. And this season, I'm trying to focus more on, we've been divided up and shattered up through all these various narratives. We're just constantly canceling everybody in the culture. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts or ideas in terms of how do we come back together? Because I feel like so much of the division It's keeping us from having the conversations that we need to have for self-healing and for community healing and that kind of thing.
So, like, for example, that's just too big of a job. You can't really worry about it from that angle. We actually have to just get better at communicating from a neutral standpoint so that somebody who can communicate what we're saying to the person who needs to hear it can hear it from the person who heard it from you. It's not just a you job.
Right.
Something
Like
that
an inside out rather than
something
an
I want my dad to know, for example, can only be told to him by someone he respects because of something else.
Right.
He doesn't have the same respect for me that he would have for someone else.
It's
for
hard
example.
in parental-kid
And that's
relationships
the same but that's the same for everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone has a certain person who they respect and value and put on a pedestal.
Can take
Let's
information
say.
from.
Yeah.
They can take information from those people. So it's about just committing to having these conversations and then honestly just knowing that they're going to find who's meant to find them. Just by us having them,
Yeah.
we're putting it out there and people will find them. And then we have to just encourage people to keep speaking up and to keep, building communities, building friendships where these kind of conversations are normal, which is like, that actually takes work. Because I don't know about you guys, but in the beginning of this life for me, I would cry when I would talk about stuff that was real because it hurt.
Yeah.
It wasn't comfortable. And I think a lot of people need to know that. Like, if you're at the beginning of your healing journey, or if in the beginning, it's really hard.
Yeah.
When you talk about things, it hurts. And you have to be willing to be vulnerable. And sometimes people are going to hold you and sometimes they're not. And you have to hold yourself in those moments. And honestly, congratulate yourself for being so vulnerable that you're allowing yourself to be seen in a way that could be judged, but you don't care because you're liberated because you're finally seen in what you actually feel.
Yeah.
If we don't start by grieving what we've lost, we can't transcend being a victim of it.
That's the step everybody wants to skip.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time trying to not go into grief because grief feels like accepting what has happened rather than feeling like, you're like, if I grieve, that means I'm accepting the bullshit. I'm accepting that it happened to me.
And I don't want to accept it.
And I don't want to accept that that's what's happening. And so I'm not going to grieve. And you have to grieve. You must go through the valley of the shadow of death.
You
All
have
right.
to. That's the only way that you even will be able to understand the joy. And it's a choice, right? It's free will. So you have to be able to have experienced the dark night of the soul and then know that it was comfortable for you in some aspect.
You made it.
You were comfortable there.
With the
and your
unhappiness.
attachment to it is because it feels safe, no matter how fucked up it may have been.
Familiar with your traumas.
Then you have to have the courage to turn to the unknown, which is actually synonymous with the light and with the joy and the bliss. The unknown isn't actually so scary. It's actually, we came from scary is comfortable.
I want something else, but
unknown.
I don't know what it is, therefore it's scary. And it's like, no, you literally don't get to have something else without going into the unknown.
Yeah, you don't get to you have to leave the dock before you can find another place to dock.
A couple
Yeah.
short questions, so short answer. So, Isabella Cash, thank you for all your time. Mahina, what are you most excited about in the future? Short answer.
The podcast.
Yeah! So exciting.
excited.
Gaialog, G-A-I-A log. It's going to be Gaialog. Okay,
Yeah.
Low Rochelle, how can I communicate with Mahina, and does she do any kind of one-on-one session right now?
I haven't really been doing one-on-one sessions, but if you send me an email, we can discuss what that might look for you. Like if you really feel like you're feeling called to that, then I can always orchestrate one around that for you.
Do you want to share your email here, or would it be better if she reached out to you on Instagram?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on Instagram and I can give you my email through that.
Okay. Boyce Brown says we should make our own Hala Wanana for psychedelic integration. I could help get it accredited.
That would be dope.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you get on that, boys? And
Yeah, boys, let's do it.
We'll have a conference call next week. We'll set it up.
Okay, synchronicities are flooding in through Boyce Brown's life right now. That's so exciting.
Nice.
Those are the best.
I feel as though I just sort of live in a river of synchronicity now. Like,
Yep.
the more I got out of the way of the river for myself, the more amazing things are happening. Like, I
Yeah.
got out of the way of thinking that I was the one steering the thing and just, like, laid back and relaxed in the river. And now it's like, oh, yeah, this all makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense.
I always feel like we just start getting going in the conversation when it's time to end it. That's why we
The
keep
law
having,
workers are finally gone.
we keep having conversations.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
let's do this again sometime. And thanks
Yeah,
for
let's
coming
do
on the
it.
show.
absolutely. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for having me. That was so fun.
Cool.
Thanks everybody
Thank
for
you.
tuning in and participating. Yeah.
Sorry about that horrible noise.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, everybody.
Sorry about all the horrible
Yes.
noises. But
Well, it's a part of the cosmic concert.
It
and
is.
We'll figure out what makes it through.
We're going to do it again sometime, and it's going to be more better.